Watts, the President Emeritus and historian at the Gettysburg Foundation. Great sunny day here on the Gettysburg Battlefield at the John Slider Farm on the south end of the Gettysburg Battlefield down near Emmitsburg Road. And I'm with Chris Gwynn, the Chief of Interpretation and Education here at Gettysburg National Military Park. And we got a rare treat today for behind the scenes at Gettysburg National Military Park. We're going to go inside the John Slider Farm. And I was just telling Chris, once again, a couple of these we've done videos on. I have never been inside some of these properties, and this is one of them. So a couple of the others I have, but I can't wait really to get inside here. This farm, which at the time when it's advertised in the paper is called the Granite Farm, owned by John Slider. And it looks like he owned it and then it passed elsewhere. And we're going to talk a little bit about that. But let's show everybody where we're at. We're near the outbuildings of the house. So, Chris, before you and I get started, let's just walk around here. So we've got the original barn here. We've got a blacksmith shop, which was one here, but this is not the original building that was here. And then if you look up in the distance, you'll see the south end of Warfield Ridge, which is where the Alabamans are for Hood's Division for July 2nd, 1863. As we've said before, at some of these properties, you're in the eye of the storm. That's right. Right here. Then if you come up here, we'll see just the top of the Michael Bushman Farm as we move up. And come right across here along the lane, which would have been occupied, the John Slider Lane, by the United States sharpshooters at the time of the battle. You got a couple monuments related to the sharpshooters there. And then we want to kind of work our way around, Chris, as I'm walking faster than that. Poor Sarah's got to go fast. I've got one mode and it's fast, and I'm going too fast. And then over to where you see the monument to E&H companies of the 2nd U.S. Sharpshooters, which is right here. And then up at the Devil's Den, which you'll see off in the distance. And we've got Slider House. We'll just kind of walk right back around here, the John Slider House. Then we've got Little Round Top, and we've also got Big Round Top that are over here behind where we're at. So when the troops attacked here on July 2nd, 1863, this is the exact attack plan. That's right. So, Chris, this farm's been in National Park Service hands for quite a number of years, and we've got a new exciting opportunity on not just this piece of property here, not just this home on the Gettysburg Battlefield offered through the National Park Service, but others. Why don't you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think one of the things that makes Gettysburg feel like Gettysburg are the buildings that are on the battlefield, the historic structures. And some of these are very, very famous. So the Meade's headquarters, the Lydia Leicester farmhouse, the Abram Bryan farmhouse, the Kadoorie farm. And we're at arguably one of the more famous ones today, the John Slider farm's located right in the heart of the battlefield in the shadow of Big Round Top. And as I mentioned to you before, and as I've said online before, it's a huge challenge for the National Park Service to take care of this place. It's a big challenge to take care of these historic buildings that we have on the landscape that are so integral to the story of the battle. We have a crew of excellent trained historic preservationists who every single day go out there and they try to make this battlefield one of the best preserved in the country. And those buildings are a huge challenge. We deal with those buildings in a couple different ways. So some of them that you see on the battlefield are employee housing. My staff, National Park Service Rangers, they live there. They call them home. Others are simply interpretive shells. They stand on the landscape like the Leicester House or the Bryan Farm that we've talked about. Others, though, like the John Slider Farm, are part of a new initiative the Park Service is launching where you can lease. You can rent out this building for a night or two or more and stay right in the heart of the Gettysburg Battlefield. So it's a really unique experience that I think are going to give visitors an eye on the battle that they've never had before, a way to immerse themselves into the park. And the great thing is, Wayne, all the money that's generated as part of this project goes back into the historic buildings. So you're helping us take care of these special places by staying here. So it's an awesome opportunity to explore the battlefield, do something unique, and help the Park Service at the same time.
And Chris, how does, if somebody wants to rent this home, how do they go about doing that? Where would they go?
What you want to do, Wayne, and thanks for mentioning that, what you want to do is go to recreation.gov. Recreation.gov. There you can search Gettysburg, and all the historic homes we're putting into the leasing program can be found there. And you can search it like any other hotel website. You can look at availability, amenities. You can take a 360-degree tour of inside each room. So it's a great way to learn a little bit more about the building. And if you'd like, find a time to make a reservation and come stay here yourself.
And we should tell all the viewers, of course, just like any other place you may rent, there are a minimum number of nights that are here, at least in this kind of atmosphere. There's a minimum number of nights. There's a number of regulations and rules. This is a historic park property. We're going to talk about that. And we also want the viewers to know that coming down the Slider Lane, if you're booked here and you have permission to come down here, you certainly go ahead and do that. You can walk around here because this is National Park Service property. If you're here to study the battle, please don't go up to the windows and look at, everybody inside, because the chances are there could be somebody inside there. Just be respectful of people's spaces here. And certainly if you rent it, you don't want somebody out here walking around
not so much,
doing that as well. So having said that, we just want to make sure that everybody's respectful and mindful of the historic properties that are here on the Gettysburg National Military Park battlefield. Chris, I really love, I'm of course interested in, especially the Texans that fought down here. Everybody I think that knows me knows I have a lot of interest in that, and they came basically right through this property during the time of the battle. As we mentioned, there is a monument here to E&H Company of the 2nd U.S. There's a monument to D Company, the 2nd U.S. Sharpshooters, on the lane. So most of these sharpshooters were on the lane, but Company F of the 2nd U.S. Sharpshooters, which is a New Hampshire company, Company F, 2nd New Hampshire, Wyman White wrote a diary, kept a diary, which was later published after the war, and it's available. People can buy it. But Wyman White was stationed with Company F, 2nd U.S., right here at this piece of property, looking out behind where your camera is, that Sarah just panned, at these oncoming Confederates. I'm thinking, you know, he's looking at Hood's division. He's got 7,000 people in Hood's division. The 2nd U.S. has got like 169 men. You know, that's what our numbers book has. They got such a small group of people. Now they're armed with breech-loading rifles, but it looks like he's actually in position behind me right over here with this stone wall. And Chris, I just wanted to bring out this account because he's actually right here behind where you and I are standing. Our skirmish line was at the time off to the right, about 1/3 of a mile south of Devil's Den, and it was nearly 4 o'clock as our line was at a halt. I was positioned at the Slider house, having a position in an angle of the stone wall just between the house and the barn. So this wall between where the barn and where the house is located. We did not have long a wait before a solid mass of rebels spilled over the ridge in our front across the Emmitsburg Pike. Their left bearing down on the Peach Orchard. Now that's off to the north of where we're at, so the line is angling. They came yelling and firing and struggling over fences through timber just in front, mostly dressed in butternut clothing. And their appearance was that of a plowed field in mass formation. Our line, being only a skirmish line, meant there were 5 paces between the men, and we were obliged to either be killed, taken prisoner. Of course, they got to fall back. The enemy line in our front was at least 90 to our 1, but still they noticed, armed with breech loaders, and we took the matter very coolly. Many of a brave Southerner threw up his arms and fell here on July 2nd. So these troops, the sharpshooters that are here, are actually going to go in. This company actually goes in with the 83rd Pennsylvania. They're up on Little Round Top when they go in. So when the Confederates are coming from behind the view in front of us up onto this line, the sharpshooters aren't here very long. John Slider, his wife, and 3 children are listed here in the 1860 census. And 1849 is, it looks like, when they acquire this property. It's about 75 acres. And there's a date stone on the house for William J. Slider, who's the son of John Slider here. And he was older. Doesn't look like he was here at the time of the battle, but he there's a date stone on this property for 1852. And it appears, at least in the claims, there's a claim of over $782 here, that the farm may at that time been owned by his brother-in-law, David Studi. So the Studis, Catherine Studi, the wife of John Slider, is a sister to Lydia Leister of General Meade's headquarters fame. So for those students in the battle, Lydia Leister was a sister to Catherine Snyder, who lived in this property, and their brother had a very beautiful brick house at what is now the Inn of Cemetery Hill. It's on Baltimore Street. Very prominent physician, David Studi. And so David Studi, it looks like, according to the claim, he owned it, and his brother-in-law and sister lived in here at the time, and then they sold it in 1863, and these guys had some good sense. As a native Buckeye, I can say they moved to Ohio, and they got the heck out of Dodge, and they moved out to near where Dayton, Ohio is, and they died over there at Dayton, Ohio. William J. Slider actually marries Josephine Rogers. So if you want to see our video on Berdan sharpshooters that talks about Josephine Rogers, she gets married in September 1863 to the son of John and Catherine Slider. All moved to Ohio, all of them. Josephine Rogers along with William J. Slider and the Slider Farm. So it looks like David Studi held this, and then he sold it, Chris, and had it sold here before it goes into Park Cans. But I've never been inside the house, and it's got the amenities today, as you mentioned. Yep. But let's take a peek inside. Hey, we're inside the John Slider house here at the Gettysburg National Military Park. We were just outside, and Chris, I got to say, it's cool. So we know we got all the amenities.
We do have air conditioning
inside here. We're inside the kitchen, and you know, for a couple people, we think, you know, 3 are listed. I got 3 children, and then John Slider and Catherine in here during the time of the battle. 5 people, that would have been a pretty crowded, I think a pretty crowded place during the time of the battle. And apparently from the claims, at least, they come back and they find that this place is pretty much damaged, in pretty bad shape. The troops that advance by here are going to clear by here and then go up to Big Round Top, and some of them go to Little Round Top. And we've got Alabamans that are behind you on the other side of where the door frame is located. I think, and we're going to do a separate video on it, but I think John Bell Hood may have been wounded along this lane, and certainly I think his wounding. What do you think about that? That's probably on the property owned by the Sliders.
Probably,
And if it's not right on that lane, it's got to be right near where it is, either at Bushman or here. And what do you think? I mean, just as we stand in this house, that's a critical wounding for the Confederates on.
Oh, absolutely. So, you know, it creates this vacuum in command where someone's got to take over for Hood, and someone's got to then take over for that individual, Vander Law. And it's just one example of the chaos, the confusion that descends on a battlefield once the actual combat starts, once the fighting starts. And certainly the wounding of John Bell Hood is a great example of that on July 2nd.
Yeah, and I think, you know, you got certainly Pender going down. You know, Reynolds dies, I'm not sure things change. You know, the whole key is the wounding on down at this part of the battle for Hood. The whole operational control goes up on the northern end of the battlefield. I think it's pretty much the same thing. But it appears that the sharpshooters didn't stay here very long, as we talked about earlier. They're out of here, and then Hood's men going through here. After the Battle of Gettysburg, this place is a wreck, and I can't describe to everybody enough how bad it actually is. I mentioned the claim at $782. They're going to come back. David Studi putting in a claim, his brother-in-law and his sister here, and tools were taken out of, we know, the carpenter shop. We've got some things where stuff is taken out. And Chris, we've said it in a couple other videos, but it's worth repeating the impact on the civilians here. What do you think about, you know, what do you want people to go away with, I guess? When we're, you know, here, it's easy to just focus on the fighting. And I think we should, you know, what do you think?
Well, I think that's the point, right? So we very often focus on the battle and the maneuvers across the landscape, the various decisions made by the commanders. I think whenever you delve into the story of the civilians, it allows you to see the battle from a different perspective, where they're fighting, in some ways, a different kind of battle. Certainly they're fighting for their survival because their lives are at stake, but so too is their livelihood, their property, their tools, their cattle, their livestock. We actually commissioned an artist named Michael Haynes to do this illustration. And again, it's an artistic rendering, it's an impression of the Slider farm just after the battle. And of course, you can see the stone house and some of the outbuildings. And here in the illustration, you can get a sense of, again, the dead that would have littered the landscape. And when the Sliders come back, they do find burials on their property. Actually, one of my favorite stories, not my favorite story, but I think a very compelling story, occurs actually in the late 1890s. When there's some workers out right outside by the monument digging fence post holes. And as they're digging, they uncover the grave of a United States sharpshooter, and they can tell by the buttons, the unique buttons that they would have worn. And so they end up calling one of the commissioners of the park at that time, which is a gentleman by the name of William Robbins, who just so happened in 1863, been with the 4th Alabama, one of the Confederate units that were making their way through this property towards Little Round Top. And so there in the 1890s, he's one of the commissioners in the park, and he's helping to disinter one of the individuals that his men might very well have killed during the battle. And it happened right outside this building.
And that body probably went up into the cemetery.
Into the National Cemetery today.
Sharpshooters in the National Cemetery. And for the viewers, we would be really remiss if we didn't mention this. For those of you that are students of Gettysburg, the movie, this house was Robert E. Lee's headquarters in Gettysburg, the movie. So the scenes that you see with Jeb Stuart arriving, that's here. That's on this lane. And I remember coming out here, and they covered up the 2nd U.S. Sharpshooter Monument, the E&H, with a little building. They actually put a building on top of it for the filming that's out there. So the scenes that we have, I know they shot all around it. I assume the inside scene was inside this house too.
Actually, I think that was in a set. But they filmed, there's a scene where on the morning of July 2nd, Lee and who else is there? Barksdale is there, and Tom Berenger is Longstreet. They're all looking at a map that was filmed right outside. Many other Confederate.
That's when they talk about how the Mississippi is today. I remember
Mississippi's ready.
Yeah, it's good. So for those of you that want to go back and get Gettysburg the movie out, you're gonna. This area, and one of the reasons I think they picked it is because they could control sort of the access to it, and make sure everybody's not wandering around.
It's secluded, it's quiet, there are no power lines out here. It's very nice.
It made it nice. I just remembered they covered up one of the buildings here. But now, this place had an original barn on the site during the time of the battle. It is not open to the public. And by the way, these properties are normally not open on a daily basis. Now they're going to be rented. People are going to be in them. But the barn is usually closed. We're going to take a peek at it. And inside the carpenter shop, blacksmith shop as well, take a look at that. Some original Civil War era buildings. So let's take a look. We're inside the John Slider barn. We just went from the house into the John Slider barn. This original barn, it was here during the time of the battle for the Slider family. And Chris, you were pointing out right when we walked in here, boy, what a great stuff. What show everybody what
you can tell, when you walk into a building like this and see these hand-hewn timbers. They tell me that, this is an original barn. And I always think about the work that would have taken to take something like this and turn it into a beam that you use in a structure. So it's a great little time capsule of mid-19th century building techniques. Reminds me of the wood in the Spangler barn and some of the other structures in the battlefield. So this was here at the time of the battle. It was an original structure on the Slider property. So as the sharpshooters are moving through, as the Alabamians and Texans are making their way to Little Round Top, they're passing by these beams. We actually bring student groups here. So if you go to Gettysburg on a field trip, you might come down to the Slider property and learn a little bit about 19th century farming.
Yeah, I was telling you, I think I've been here maybe one other time through Open Doors or one of the wet process of the park, but it's not open on a regular basis. You've got to have, a reason to be in here. But I noticed that in the claim it says one buggy, cushions, and shafts. So, it makes you wonder whether that stuff was, in here.
Stored in the property or not,
is going to be stored. 7 acres of wheat. This is losses. And we'll talk a little more when we get over by and talk about the tools, but this is the losses written by Edward Menchie. Apparently Edward Menchie was the agent for John Slider. This is Menchie Springs over by
Cemetery Hill.
Over by Cemetery Hill. I think it's the same Menchie. 7 acres of wheat, 2 acres of grass, 1 ton of hay, damaged a fence, 3 head of cattle, 2 boxes of bees and honey, which this isn't the only farm we talked about that had that. 1 saw, axe, and mattocks, 1 lot, saddler, and shoemaker's tools. That may have been in the next building we're going to go see. Looking glasses and other furniture. So mirrors, other furniture also taken out of the house. And I don't think, do we have any evidence this was a hospital? Do we? Have you ever seen
No, I mean, it may have been an aid station. Gregory Coco writes a little bit about that in his Aftermath book. But it's certainly nothing on par with what, again, happened at the Spangler Farm or some of these well-established field hospitals.
It wasn't set up as a hospital, but people looking for cover.
Certainly an aid station. Very, very possible, yeah.
We understand that this building is, at what you've said to me, this building was an original for the time of the Civil War, but it wasn't original to this site.
That's correct. So it's a 19th century structure, but it wasn't here at the time of the battle. This was moved here at some point in the 20th century.
Yeah.
For a brief period of time, what we call the Slider Farm today was actually called the Granite Farm, and it was used as a living history destination. So if you came to Gettysburg in the late 70s, early 80s, you might have traveled down to the Granite Farm, and here we had living historians basically representing the Gettysburg civilian population. So demonstrations of farming, of mid-19th century life, and a part of that was the blacksmith shop. So we can kind of step in here.
Yeah. Wow, it's got the original hearth for ears and amble for doing that. And in some of the claim, Chris, there's the bellows. Look at that big bellows that's here. Some of the claims actually mention one set of harness tools taken and one set of carpenter tools taken. So obviously this stuff taken out of here being used by either the Union or Confederates, probably likely to be Confederates doing that. But and you want to have this separated from the house or anywhere near it because this thing catches on fire.
That's absolutely right. And it produces an enormous amount of heat.
You're in trouble. But we can't stress enough the value of something like this. Your horseshoes, all the iron that would have been used on a farm at the time of the Civil War, and the necessity of doing that. So, and this you show today, but you don't operate. This is
and this is not usually open to the public. And again, there are special occasions and exceptions to that. We do bring student groups out here, but by and large, this is not something that the normal visitor gets to see, which is why it's great to be able to come out with the Gettysburg Foundation for an insider tour.
So you're getting an inside look here at the blacksmith shop here at the John Slider Farm. So we thank you for that.
Absolutely.
Chris. So we've been in the house, we've been in the barn, and now we're in the blacksmith shop. There was a smokehouse here that's original during the time of the battle. A couple other original. We got some original buildings that we've been able to see, but you're in the heart of the battlefield for July 2nd, 1863. And if you want to help preserve these places, there's a simple, actionable way to do that. And the actionable way to do that is to get on recreation.gov and stay out here. And not only are you going to get this unique experience, but you're going to be able to support the properties long term. Now, I know there's a few of the viewers that are going to have some reservations about renting some of these places out. Chris, you just mentioned that the park has a lot of properties. I think you told me over 100.
That's right, it's over 100.
Some other videos, over 100 pieces of property, 100 building structures, different types of structures all over the battlefield. All these take money. They take expertise, the park team to do this, tremendous, and manpower to be able to do. So I'm in favor. I've been around here an awful lot of years. I'm in favor of helping the park. Whatever helps the park, I'm in favor of. So these places could set without anybody in them, and they could deteriorate, or we could find a solution that people could come and the funding could be used for the upkeep not only of this property or the property where you're staying, but the other properties on the battlefield. So you won't find a bigger advocate. I'm a strong advocate for it, and I just want to thank the Park Service for coming up with this, what I call a unique, that's out of the box thinking.
Yeah, it is.
And we should know this isn't the only park that is like I think you mentioned, there's other places. You can do this at other parks. We want you to come here and do it, but there's other experiences.
There's been a lot of great work done at parks like Valley Forge and Cape Cod, and even the C&O Canal has a program very similar to this.
I heard they're doing the lock keepers.
That's right. So as you're traveling down the C&O Canal, you can rent out various lock keepers buildings along the way, and the program here at Gettysburg is very similar to that. All the money that is generated by this program goes back into the park, back into these historic buildings, and so we're very grateful for anyone that can help us support that.
Well, thank you, Chris. And as your partner, the Gettysburg Foundation, we're here to help any way we can in producing this video today. We hope we'll give you an inside look at this very historic property, give you some education about it, and also give you an action step. Come stay here. What a great thing. Isn't that cool, everybody? That's the word we would use. So, Chris, I want to thank you for your time. I want to thank Sarah and Abby of our social media team that are here with us. Got to have everybody behind the camera working on this. We get to come up and take all the bows. These poor folks have to do a lot of the work. So we want to thank them. Chris, thanks again for this unique opportunity to come out. We wish the park the greatest luck on getting these places out so people can not only have a unique experience but helping the rest of the buildings here at the park. Stay tuned on the social media channels for the Gettysburg Foundation. Be sure to like us, subscribe, follow us on all of that. There's a little button down the screen. Hit it, hit subscribe, follow these videos, and give us your support. We appreciate it very much. Thank you.